Okay, so obviously a big part of your business is invoicing and collecting payments. That's the fun part. That's where you get paid. Now, the other aspect of your business is managing your expenses. And the OrbisX system includes a complete suite of managing expenses tools so that you can keep up with your accounting as well as export them to popular formats ready for Quickbooks so that you can hand it off to your accountant when tax time comes. So managing expenses is very, very simple, and you do so by going to Finances, Expenses, and then this page that we see here is going to load. It's going to list all your existing expenses, as well as it's going to allow you to add expenses, search, and even filter, with the final option being to export. And that's going to export to an Excel file that you can give to your accountant or import into QuickBooks, however you want to manage that if you need that option. So first, in your expenses, you can search with a term as well as start date, end date. So for example, I can search Google, and I'm going to search, and it's going to pull up all my Google expenses and things related to Google. So that's going to pull up here, and you can click over them. You can see, the taxes paid, the currency, so on and so forth, if that applies, as well as view the receipt. If you have a receipt for it, you can edit, copy, and delete. And then the last thing is this option here. You can mark them as repaid, which is very important because sometimes you might have something that was billed. Maybe it's a loan, or it's you had to lend your company some money for something, or some instance where you're going to need to mark that as repaid or not repaid. You also have the option to have recurring expenses. And lastly, you can view notes. So let's look at adding a new expense. So we'll click on Add New Expense, the heading here, and that's going to open up this box where we can enter in the amount. So let's say we had a $100 expense and no tax paid, or you can choose the tax that you paid and it'll calculate it for you automatically. Then you can choose the currency that it was made in, the expense date. You can change that if it's not today. You can add a reference number, which is helpful when you have to search for expenses later. You can also add the vendor. You can add the category. And if it applies to a client, you can assign that to a client as well. Okay? Then you can upload the receipt, and you can mark off if this expense recurs every month or if it does not. Add some notes and click Add Expense. That's it. That will then be added into the system. Now let me just clear this search here. 1 second. Now the next thing you can do is filter. So show only the ones that are owing. So remember I mentioned here the repaid or not repaid. You can click that and it'll filter out all the ones that have been repaid and only show you the ones that are still owing. You can also show only recurring. That will then go and it'll show only the ones that are marked as being recurring, right? Lastly, you can export, and that'll export them into an Excel file that can be given to your accountant, and they're able to import that into their program that they're using to file your taxes and so on and so forth. All right, so that's managing your expenses in a nutshell. Now you can also use the global search up here. So if I type in Google, for example, it's going to pull up a list here, and so you can see a list of all expenses, but it's also going to search other things like appointments. It's going to search the customers, everything like that. So, this is good for a search, but sometimes if you just want to search just within expenses, that's why there's a separate search box here as well, and you can choose a start date and the end date so that you can get that to your accountants. So that's essentially how to do that in a nutshell. Now, one last thing is with expenses, under reports, you have this option here for Accountant's Rundown. So if I click on Accountant's Rundown, it's going to show a quick accounting report. And so this has to do with your expenses as well. So let me just go, I'll go from January till now, change date. And okay, that still didn't show up anything. This is a demo account, so I don't know where there's information entered and where there isn't. Okay, so it looks like we have not entered in the payments in the demo account, so that's why the money in isn't showing up. But basically, this is your accounting report that you can get to your accountant, and they will be able to, you can send this report by email as well, and it's going to show, key metrics for them: accounts receivable, money in, money out, as well as the taxes paid, taxes collected, and the tax that you have to collect on accounts receivable. So it's just a quick rundown for the accountants should they need that. Now, oops, that's estimates. Now they will also have access. You can create an accountant login, and then when they log in, all they're going to be able to see is the expenses, invoices, payments, as well as the accountant report. So if you just want to hand that over, like that's what we've done at our shop, we just handed that over to our accountant. They just log in, they can export, they can search, they can do whatever they need to do. They then import everything into their Quickbooks, and they just file our quarterly submissions that way. So there's lots of options that you have when it comes to managing your expenses. It is a very important part of your business to make sure that the tax man doesn't come after you, and also to make sure that you have an idea of how your business is doing, because then you can go to your financial snapshot and you'll be able to see. So like here we have like invoices, payments, but then we also have the expenses that we can view too. So here you can see your financial snapshot of expenses, things like that. So very helpful tools, and that's how you manage your expenses within the OrbisX system.